There's no place to escape to.
This is the last podcast.
On the left. That's when the cannibalism started.
What was that?
Because you told me to start as quick as possible, and I did, and then I'm in trouble. Welcome to the last podcast on the left, everyone. I am Ben Kissel, as always, looking at the beautiful Marcus Parks.
Hello.
We have Henry Zabrowski with us. Henry, you were recognized as, for being the star of Heroes Reborn.
Yeah,
well,
dude.
buying what?
Rubbers. I was buying condoms at the store, and a man turned to me. He was like, "Oh shit, you Quentin? Heroes Reborn." I was like, "Yeah, man, yeah. I'm glad you watched the show." And he's like, "Man, you fucking?" And I was like, "Yep, yes,
Must
yes,
be.
I am.
Yes,
Must
sir.
be. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yep. Ultra thin.
Stu? Is that Stu? Buying condoms?
You fucking?" I always keep the "you fucking." You know, I was like, "Yep, yes." Wickedy do.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, you know it puts a skip on my step. But ding, 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 and we danced in a circle, arm in arm, back and forth, and then he robbed me.
Isn't that nice? The celebrity lifestyle you're living. You can't even buy condoms without being harassed in the line.
Speaking of fucking,
Yeah, all right. So today's subject matter, I don't know if this is really either way sex is involved. I guess it's disgusting. Leonard Lake and Charles Ng. That's it.
NG, but pronounced ing.
this is where the white parts of us really show.
Yeah.
We're not really sure how to pronounce some of these Asian names, but I know it's Charles Ng. I know that they don't have like a serial killer name, do they?
No, neither one of them do.
Which is very interesting because they're very particular. I think at one point they were called the video confession killers because, as you're going to see, Leonard Lake and Charles Ng are that. Well, they're not the necessary sort of serial killer you're really used to. These guys documented everything.
And they did it the old-fashioned way on VHS tape, okay? They didn't have their iPhone. They could just upload it to iMovie to make a good smut film.
But we figured for the Christmas season, what better to bring in the holiday that makes all of us, particularly me, feel the darkest emotions that I'll feel all year. I hate the holiday. December is a shitty month. It's full of tension. Everybody just wants you to fucking buy. We've had 3 shooters this week, and you know what? I'm not feeling that particularly jolly. So I don't want any of you to feel that way either.
All right, well, let's not mention the shooters anymore. It's an evergreen show.
What are you talking about? The shooters are here to stay.
Well, yeah, that's true. Actually, as a matter of fact, someone can listen to this 5 years from now and be like, there was 3 shooters this week. That's a good point, Henry. Let's start it off.
These guys, Leonard Lake and Charles Ng, they were partners in crime in at least 11 and at the most 25 murders over the span of just over a year from 1982 to 1983 in the San Francisco area. Now, Lake and Ng killed men, women, children, even 2 entire families, but they were focused mainly on imprisoning, torturing, and killing young women in the pursuit of creating what Leonard Lake named his M-Lady.
Yeah, the Operation Miranda, he liked to call it after his favorite book, The Collector by John Fowles.
Oh,
I believe it was called.
I thought it was after my favorite Sex in the City character. She really butchered that name.
That's the thing, is that some of those Mirandas were actually closer to a Charlotte.
Yeah, that's
but,
true.
They became Mirandas. This is a horrible story. This is like Marcus and I were both talking about it. Dog Meat and I both had to take several showers while researching this. This is highly despicable. They killed babies. Charles Ng drew cartoons depicting the things they did to babies, whether they were satire or not. I mean, they were
satire.
They were funny-looking cartoons. They were funny. They were funnily drawn.
Satire is, sort of defined by it not actually happening in real life.
He drew. There was one where literally he drew himself with a chef hat on it, and he had a chef hat on in it, and he was stereotypically Asian, and he was chopping a baby, and he was literally going ding dong, killed a baby, oh, cooked a baby.
And again, we will not say that's stereotypically Asian.
No.
That is stereotypically serial killer.
No, I mean he drew himself in a fashion.
I see.
He was racist against himself. I'm not racist.
Really, as we'll find with Charles Ng, one of the most stereotypically Asian people that has ever existed.
And
Very smart.
He's a difficult man.
Yeah.
But these guys were real Bo Jacksons of the killer world.
Jack of all trades.
These guys who I could really compare them to the most is The Toy Box Killer. This is the worst, most disturbing episode. As far as things that we have, journals, videos from these guys, this is the most disturbing thing that we're going to cover since The Toy Box Killer. And guess what? We're going to cover it a lot. And we're going to start right up top with Leonard Lake, a bit of a video blogger.
Yes.
Loved to record his own conversations.
Love the sound of his own voice.
Love the sound of his own voice.
Sort of a Nixon meets the wedding tape killer.
Yes.
But this guy, he started everything off with what was eventually called the philosophy tape. And in this, he set out exactly how he was going to pull off Operation Miranda. Let's listen
to this
to the
fucking
tape.
piece of shit.
I believe that if I can construct a holding cell, I can create a facility that is so stark and so empty that fairly quickly, by a combination of painful punishments when I'm displeased, I can quickly condition a young woman to cooperate with me fully. It may not work. However, I want to try.
And what you're going to find out is that what these two men go on to construct is a gigantic Byzantine underground bunker, not unlike H.H. Holmes, that becomes their playground for sadistic sexual play for up to 25, possibly women, men, and children.
Yeah. These guys, when as I'm researching, of course, when we research these things, it's the only thing that we can talk about to people. And when
Which just makes us great. I mean, Christmas time. And it was also researching it while doing Thanksgiving. We're like sitting, Marcus and I are literally at Thanksgiving together. Like, I just see Marcus vigorously carving the turkey.
Yeah, getting too into it, Marcus.
Yeah, going over there, being like, oh, looking like a real M lady over there, and then we have a hearty laugh, and then about 30 seconds of chilled silence.
Yeah, don't have children anytime soon, guys.
But these guys, Leonard Lake and Charles Ng, when I tell people, we're working on these like most brutal, one of the most amazing true crime stories that I've ever researched, people don't know about them. Just like people didn't know about the Toy Box Killer. It's because I think it's too much.
It's quite a bit.
It's quite a bit. It's just that the brutality of these guys, it's too much to handle.
It's like Kid A. The album Kid A.
Right, great album. You know, this is just...
but these guys are a special brand of pieces of shit. They are control freaks, hyper nerds, military nerds, which I think in the end, which we're going to see are the worst kind. We're going to see that it's military nerds. I think eventually you turn into a terrorist like Timothy McVeigh. It's kind of that same mentality. And these guys just love to put it in the bush in a way that was criminal.
That's a good point. And I do want to point out dog meat actually woofed, which was kind of exciting.
Woof.
You gave a woof. I can't get the image out of my head of him pushing play on the VHS recorder and then having to run in front of the camera and then deliver it. And like, oh!
There is some of that in the tapes.
I see.
Yeah. Well, while these guys are both very fascinating, let's start with Leonard Lake. Now, Leonard was born to Gloria and Elgin Lake on October 29th, 1945 in San Francisco, California. He'd be followed by his sister, Sylvia, and a brother, Donald. A little after Donald came, though, Leonard's father, a notorious alcoholic, hightailed it up to Seattle to escape his presumably miserable life.
And there is a special bus line for drunk dads that you can take from San Francisco to Seattle called the Dribble. You can take that Dribble bus all the way down, and it's just a bunch of drunk dads just hanging out, just swigging out a flask, having the best time in their lives, just listening to nothing but Def Leppard. And they drive that bus at twice the speed limit just in case they crash, and it'll kill all of them instantly.
Right. It's like a Greyhound, but the toilet's always full.
Yes, and they want it to go. They want it to flip.
Take the dribble when you're a sad dad.
Well, Gloria did follow Elgin up to Seattle a couple of months later to try to save the marriage, but little Leonard would be left at home with the grandparents, never to live with either of his parents ever again, despite his mother and siblings returning to San Francisco within the year. Leonard stayed with his grandparents until he came of age.
Now, this is what happens while he's staying with his grandparents is fairly rough. We're gonna see early on that Leonard Lake, you know, how, like mostly when couples like split up and they do the thing where they're like they tell their children, "This is not your fault. This is mommy and daddy still love you. We just needed to leave." I'm pretty certain that all of this was Leonard Lake's fault. Leonard Lake started off as a child highly sexually active. They said that he was a child, like, and that's actually not unnormal. A lot of kids wake up, like, kind of have a weird preternatural sexual fascination, but then it either mellows out or they become like a Larry Flint. You know what I mean?
Sure.
You become constructive with it.
Make some money.
Or a Jeffrey Dahmer. Or a Leonard Lake. And so he he was sexually fascinated with his own sister. But the thing is, his grandmother raised them in a very particular way, where she wanted them to understand the beauty of the human body. And a part of what she did, I don't know how much of it's true or not, but this is from what I read from various sources like Murderpedia and a couple other places, that she basically made him take nude pictures of his sisters in order to help him get an artistic appreciation of the naked human form, and eventually began to develop a sexual obsession with his youngest sister, Sylvia. And eventually their older brother, Donald, became this very aggressive member of the household and used to beat on all of them. And what Leonard used to do was say to his sister, "I'll protect you from Donald if you start to do this thing to me I like to call a blowjob."
All right.
So he did that with his sister a lot, so that's entertaining, huh?
Interesting tale, Henry. Interesting tale indeed.
Leonard also had a problem with animals. His cousin, Chester Richardson, used to visit Lake when they were about 8 or 9 years old. Chester said that Lester had a thing for mice. He had pet mice, started off with just a few, but as Chester told it, they reproduced in the thousands. But Chester's testimony might be a little suspect. He seemed to be a bit of an exaggerator. This is what he had to say about Leonard's mice.
He had a little city for him. It's a regular little mouse world. There were tunnels and castles and mazes and even a little train for them to ride on.
That is kind of cute, a mouse conductor. That is kind of adorable. But that doesn't seem to be too malicious at this point. This is kind of a creative thing for a kid to do.
It seems like someone who enjoys early games of being God to a group of tiny things you can own and command. Then yes, it's very constructive.
So you just described the job of a city planner, which is all that he really was.
But I
for
would be
mouse,
very
for mice.
concerned if I heard from the mouth of a city planner, "Y'all just my mice going through my mazes and my tunnels till I'm done with you."
I guarantee you they talk exactly like that. I actually promise that.
Well, I mean, as far as him having a little mouse world, that's not so bad. No. But when it came time to get rid of him, Chester said that Leonard sold some, gave away a few others.
Businessman, charity
but
work.
For the most part, killed them and dissolved their bodies in acid using his beginner chemistry set. Much like Jeffrey Dahmer.
But he said that when this is also true, this is a quote from his cousin. He said that what he would do is he would put them in a little jar of acid and they would slowly turn into a green little goo.
An ugly green goo.
Yeah, ugly green goo.
Not a beautiful forest green. Huh?
Yeah. Kind of reminds. It's like Ratatouille, but fucking when he turns into slime.
Right. Yeah, I think that'll be in the sequel.
Well, as Henry said earlier, Leonard always had a problem with his brother Donald. See, Donald had been hit in the head by a train when he was 9.
Yeah, I read that. Now, are we talking a human train? A train that carries humans, or a small train?
I gotta say, I mean, technically, his head's way stronger than most.
Right? Because if he got hit by an actual train, this good on him.
Yeah, it's an old-timey injury.
Well, that, of course, caused brain damage, which caused Donald to be, in the words of his sister, quote, a little slow, and also made him quite violent. And
that's the kicker. That's the kicker right there.
And it also made him dependent on his mother. And this informed Leonard's opinion that he held from a very early age that people who were dependent on the government were lazy or incompetent. He said that he would poison the water supply of everyone on welfare if he could.
Now, what we're seeing here is a very intense, conservative, like military-like streak that literally started from when he was a boy. It's like, what you're going to say right here is that he basically became he's a piece of shit early and an insufferable teenager.
Oh, yeah.
One of the worst I hate it when kids are conservative. Nothing is worse than seeing like a child Republican, because that means like there's no place to go from there. Like you have to start warm-hearted, and slowly the world should make you cold and broken. That's the goal of life.
course. Yeah, definitely.
But not when you're young. You shouldn't start like that.
No, you shouldn't start railing against welfare queens when you're 10.
No. I mean, the only thing you can do when you're 20 is to make a murder basement. That's the only place you can go.
Yeah, that's eventually. If you start cold at 10 by, I think he was about 35 when the murder basement came.
Yeah.
So start high and then slowly go back down. But yeah, Leonard did grow up to be an insufferable teenager, not just because of the conservative views, but he was also one of those kids that said like, oh, I worship ancient Norse gods. And then he said like, well, actually, I'm a Buddhist. And then finally he settled on atheism, saying that he didn't place any faith in, quote, holy Joes.
Yeah. But that's sort of normal. I went through a little, I went through the Wicca phase, and then I went through my wearing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre shirt for 2 years phase, and then I'm back at both of them.
Yeah.
So it's weird, but now I choose it, and in a fun way.
Yeah, but it is what you really get with Leonard Lake is that when I read about Leonard Lake, I really can't help but think about the internet. Because his entire persona is kind of that, what has now become the cliche neckbeard persona.
Yes, he's a neckbeard.
Yeah,
that's exactly the way to put it. He gives us 1 star on iTunes.
Yeah.
This guy. It's this guy's, and like people like my mom who are like, it's the party humor that I don't like, 1 star.
That's right. Do you think the internet would have saved him?
I have actually been thinking about that quite a bit. Is if he would have had something on the internet's other guys to say like, yeah, of course, women are all bitches. They're there for you. They're there to be your slave. Maybe he wouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
But.
Like a real men's rights guy. Well,
Yeah.
my question is with him is that to be honest, when I think of Leonard Lake, I think of the Cannibal Cop guy. What I think is that what he would have used the internet for, we're going to get into with Leonard Lake, is this is a man that was all about sexual fantasy for forever, deep, dark sexual obsession with every time. And the one thing that the internet can do is I think porn is really good in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think it's good to masturbate. I think it's one of those things you got to do. It helps a lot of people. I think it saves a lot of people from rape. I think it quells a lot of rape fantasies if you could jerk it out and get it out of your system. This is the type of guy that I think that sort of sexual obsession and the way you can go down a deep, dark sex hole on the internet would have made him even worse.
That's a great documentary. I think it's called Thought Crimes on Valet, Officer Valet, all about the Cannibal Cop.
It's really good.
The other side of the internet argument is that it normalizes such fantasies as well. So he could also get sort of caught up 5-10 years later. He has it so ingrained in his mind that this is just common thought that he goes and acts it out without knowing the ramifications of his actions.
It could be, but it also could be that, he has this fantasy about a Miranda woman, this sort of like trapped slave, and then he goes on kink.com and sees that exact same thing, jerks it out, and he's fine.
Subscribes to a webcam service doing that kind of thing and get a private message, do all that shit.
Goes to the UK and pays $500 and has the experience actually acted out for him, which is something that they do at the kink.com facilities. There's a great documentary on it. I forget the name.
It's just called Kink. It's great.
Okay.
All the while he's the manager of Best Buy.
Boom, boom.
Yes, exactly. Lake, as a teenager, speaking of fantasy, he was also obsessed, and this was a lifelong obsession, with a novel called The Collector. Now, the story of The Collector goes that a lonely butterfly collector becomes fixated on a young woman named Miranda. He kidnaps her and forces her to stay in a prison of his own making. Here's an excerpt from The Collector.
It was like not having a net and catching a specimen you wanted in your first and second fingers. I was always very clever at that. Coming up slowly behind and you had it, but you had to nip the thorax, and it would be quivering there. It wasn't easy like it was with the killing bottle, and it was twice as difficult with her, because I didn't want to kill her. That was the last thing I wanted.
But this is a very common, almost a fairy tale type trope. Rapunzel, stuck away in the castle, or even Shrek is about something similar.
Well, that's about rescue. That's about rescuing.
No, I think the detectives are Shrek. Leonard Lake is whatever the name of the terrible prince is.
Yeah, exactly. Leonard Lake is the guy that keeps them, that keeps them in captivity.
But it's also, there's the opposite, too. This is where Leonard Lake is a lot like BTK, where he romanticizes the whole thing and his position in it. It's a part of that is viewing yourself as a sympathetic evil king, where you're like, you want to keep somebody and use them exactly how you want them to. And to him, when you'll see later on, we go through the rules, once Operation Miranda is in full force, he begins to believe, but eventually they'll love being captive.
Yeah, exactly. And
sort of the Stockholm Syndrome thing.
Yeah, and Leonard Lake is one of the reasons why I consider Leonard Lake so fascinating is because you can, since we have so many documents written by him, since we have so much video evidence of him actually talking about these crimes very candidly, we can really see the evolution of this guy.
Yes.
We can see how these things actually, how he
went from fantasy to reality.
Yeah, and why he went from fantasy to reality, what that actually came. And what I kind of think is that we'll definitely get into this more probably in part 2 or part 3, is that it's kind of a midlife crisis.
Yes, because that's what you're going to see later on. We'll go into this, but once he hits 35, he's like, I'm dumpy, I'm bald. He says all this stuff. He's like, my body's bad. There's a type of woman I want to have sex with that will not look at me, and so I need to find a way to make sure I can get that from them because I deserve it because I've come this far, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He's a piece of shit.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, he's like the extreme version of the internet nice guy. It's like, I'm a nice guy. Why do they always go with the assholes? Leonard Lake is the absolute extreme version of that.
Right. I mean, if he didn't invest so much damn money in this murder basement, he could have bought a Corvette and trolled the town. I'm sure some young gal would have loved it.
You just do that shit.
That's what you do.
That shit. You don't need to keep a prisoner. I'll say anyway right now, if you have prisoners,
let him go. Let him go. Let him go.
Get him out of there.
Come on, you don't want it. It's too much of a hassle.
Yes.
You know it is, okay? When it comes down to it, you know how hard it is to keep the prisoners. Just let him go. But you know what you should do is go ahead, buy a Corvette.
Get a Corvette or whatever the coolest car is nowadays.
So Leonard Lake, of course, it does take until his mid-30s to actually enact the Operation Miranda. But the man that he enacts it with is a man 15 years his junior, one Mr. Charles Ng.
And his middle name's Cheetah.
Yeah, which is so cool.
His name is actually Charles Cheetah Ng.
Which is very funny because he's very chubby. And he doesn't seem like he'd move all that fast.
Well, he became chubby later as he got into prison, because they all get chubby in prison. But he was kind of spry when he was a younger fella.
When he was a rapist, you mean?
Yep.
Absolutely. So
Charles Cheetah Ng.
Charles Cheetah Ng. Leonard Lake's partner in crime. He was born on Christmas Eve, 1960, in Hong Kong, to Kenneth and Oi Ping Ng. He was the youngest of 3, and although middle class, the family of 5 lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 grandmothers and 2 aunts.
Which is, they had a very big family support system in China. That's kind of how that's how they live. It's cultural. But his father was like a driving, demanding man. Again, kind of cultural. He's a real tiger dad, which means that he beat the fuck out of him like a bunch. Yeah. But he really just wanted, if you listen to the stories afterwards, like of the experts of his father, because the truth is that he had a lot of hope for Charlie, and he put a lot of work into Charlie and was like, I'm going to do the best for you and pay for all these private schools. But then when it didn't work out, he started flipping out, started beating him. But later on, his father was like, hey, maybe I should not be beating so much.
Yeah. Maybe not. Well, this whole thing could have been avoided if the Chinese would have put in their one-child policy way earlier.
This is Hong Kong.
This is Hong Kong.
So it's a British territory.
Different. Very good.
So Ng is different from Lake in that as a child, he actually loved animals and went to great lengths to care for them. Case in point was his pet chicken. Now, Charles had raised his pet chicken.
It's very dangerous to raise a chicken in Hong Kong and consider it a pet.
Yeah.
Yes, it did not work out. And so the chicken met its end in a cooking pot. And we don't know, by the way, if Charles was informed of him eating his pet chicken before or after dinner.
You know, it's straight out of South Park. It's what Cartman did when he fed the man's parents in the
Scott
mixed
Tinnerman's parents too. Yes, yeah. In
It's
front of
unbelievable.
Radiohead.
I want to say this. I was very good with chickens as a child. The Swenson farm had a missing chicken. And what detective did they call? Some stupid one. And then I went in there and I got the chicken out.
What are you talking about?
Swenson's lost a chicken.
No, Swenson's is a
That's
grocery
the name
store.
of a family. That is the name of a family.
Oh,
that
the
lost
family.
a chicken.
Oh, okay.
They sent in somebody to get the chicken. The chicken did not go to that person. I
Where
was
did the
13
chicken go?
It was up in the coop. And I went in.
But is that
and I
where
went
the
in and
chicken's
said,
supposed to be?
Chick. Yes. No, but they wanted it to probably kill it.
So you... Okay.
Well, now that I think about it, actually...
Yeah, you were the
chicken-
Grim Reaper of this chicken.
Well, yeah,
You
now
went
it-
out, earned this chicken's trust somehow as a giant
Yeah.
boy.
Yeah.
You went out and, like, did you flap your arms
Oh.
and buckle down like you were a giant chicken?
Very theatrical. I did what I had to do.
Now, was this at the time when you were also told by the principal you were hugging people too much?
No, that was years later. Yeah. So, anyway, I just
And
wanted
a
to say,
little look into the life of Ben Kissel.
I got the chicken down. The chicken and I were very
Another
close.
day in long fat man history.
Concerning other pets, Oi Ping said,
Well, there's a problem since he kept getting these delicious pets.
Yeah.
So he got a turtle. And so the mother said when he's walking around with his turtle on a leash, and then later, he had a turtle, and he would not let us rock it up, so the turtle was all over the place in the house. So every day, he's buying fish to feed his turtles, and then what are you going to do? The turtle's getting bigger, and I'm like, turtle soup. And so I just get the craving for it. So what do? Chip it to chop with my chopping knife, and no turtle no more. Charlie come in, and he's like, oh, where my turtle go? I say, you eat soup for 3 days. You eat soup for 3 days. That's where turtle go. And
Right.
Charlie go, oh, boo-hoo.
Yeah, he was very sad. I didn't know that turtles ate fish.
yeah,
Who knew,
of
huh?
course, yeah. And then, of course, there was the dog, to which Oi Ping said,
They're very smeary. It's very smeary. So we wanted to bring it to the pond with the turtle to far away to Chari, and I have the Chari reach the turtle out to the pond. And then there was a dog. I'm afraid of dog. So he released it where there are some other dog, so the dog can have some companion. And the whole time I'm like, Chari, why you boo-hoo? And Chari boo-hoo say he gonna rock up woman and make her do the rape for many months. And I'm like, Charlie boo-hoo.
Seems to me like Charlie's mother is the future serial killer. She's just killing all the poor boys' pets.
and you know, each pet that was lost just devastated little Charlie. Just
And the
devastated
thing is that
him.
he was such a little bitch. You're going to see this later on, too, when the trial goes south and he's sentenced to death.
Yeah.
You see this pout come on his face where he's just like, fucking court, always wrong. Where he's like, literally, like, that's what he literally, I'm not being racist.
No.
I'm barely
It's-
being racist.
Yeah. No, that is actually exactly what he sounded like.
Yeah, and so this little kid, like, these were temper tantrums.
Yeah.
When she took these pets away, it's because you're living in a goddamn house with your 2 aunts and your grandparents instead. The last thing you want is a turtle and a dog shitting all over the place. I understand why she turned them into soup.
No, I'm on Charlie's side on this one.
I'm not.
Have you ever heard of a parent killing your favorite animal and then feeding it to you three times?
This is China. This is China. There's very little food going around. He's bringing food in the house that he's giving names. You
I don't
you're
know.
just bringing food in the house.
I don't even know which side you guys are on anymore.
I am so pro not feeding your child their pet.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
I mean, I'm just saying there's a difference between a pet and an amateur farm. You know what I mean? That's what he's turning the house
I
into.
don't know.
Of course, these temper tantrums turned into behavioral problems. Charles started getting into trouble again and again, particularly liked hurling Molotov cocktails off of roofs, loved bullying little British children, Hong Kong being a British territory. But what he was into most of all was theft. He would steal anything, and his thieving ways would land him in jail again and again throughout the years, and eventually this would result in both his and Leonard Lake's downfall way down the line.
And he was real sneaky.
Yeah.
yeah.
You know,
He was
well,
super sneaky.
Not
He
that
always
sneaky.
was-
He
but-
seemed to get caught all the time.
No, he was a bad thief.
Right.
You know, it's very interesting with people that are like, they become career thieves. And the reason why they become known as career thieves is because they keep getting caught.
Right.
Yeah, career thieves never get caught. The best ones you never hear about.
Yeah. which is interesting. How many career thieves are out there? If you're a career thief, listen, all right, I'm going to do total impunity. All right, we won't ask your name.
Yeah.
Use a burner email. Please email us if you steal for a living. I want to hear how you do it.
Henry, just do me a favor. Check your pockets. Is your wallet still there?
Benjamin!
Yes.
Another day in long fat man history.
So Ing, as a kid, bounced from private school to private school because of, the thievery and the arson and the like. That eventually landed him in San Francisco in 1979. And by October of that year, Charles had faked his birth certificate and joined the U.S. Marines.
And that is the thing that would bring him and Leonard Lake together was Semper Fi, that a whole idea of Marines bonding together, because Leonard Lake also joined the Marines. Because from a young age, Charles Ing was convinced that the Army was going to be like the perfect fit for him because he had violent tendencies, he loved guns, he was obsessed with everything about like the uniform. He thought it was going to give him some legitimacy, and little did he know he had a brother in Leonard Lake, technically a father figure in Leonard Lake.
Yeah, he really did. And Leonard Lake, he joined the Marines at a pretty bad time, January 1964.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was just a few months before Gulf of Tonkin and just a few months before the United States would go full on into the Vietnam War.
Right.
So military life immediately appealed to Leonard Lake. Of course, he loved the guns. He loved the quote-unquote survival skills that he learned in the Marines. But what he really enjoyed was the affectations of military life.
Well, that's what all these guys do. They like the feeling that being in the military give him, these types that join the Marines.
These types, no. They're, we have a ton of listeners in the armed forces out there, but these guys, people in the armed forces, the guy we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's the piece of shit that's there just because he gets a helmet and a gun.
Yeah, and loves camouflage. That Leonard Lake was one of those camo guys that only shops at Army Surplus, wears camouflage all the time, lots of berets. He loved the language of the military. He always referred to all of his actions, no matter how mundane or sinister, he always called them operations or ops for short.
God, Operation Go Get Me Some Toilet Paper because I just shat and I ran out of paper towels.
Yeah, you just poo-pooed yourself in the middle of mess hall. That's not an operation. Just go clean up.
Operation Brownie Pockets is in effect.
Yeah, is that what you're going to call that? You just shat yourself, you drunk bastard.
And, of course, there was the promise of violence. Leonard, later on, he would tell people that he loved his time in Vietnam. He didn't even want to leave. They made him leave, that he, quote-unquote, killed a lot of people, and that the hardest thing he had to do was, quote-unquote, zip up a body bag.
But he was totally full of shit.
He was lying.
Because he worked, what was he? He's a radar technician.
He was a radar technician. And that's another thing that that vets say a lot, is that the guys that talk about combat never saw any.
Right, so they're trying to just sort of, trump up their own egos, huh?
They're trying to trump up their own egos. They're trying to seem impressive to people, or they're trying to intimidate people. It's like, yeah, I killed some motherfuckers. The people who actually kill people don't fucking talk about it.
No, they're haunted by it. My uncle killed people. He can't even talk about Vietnam. He can't even go to Chinatown.
Right. So
that's true, right?
I mean, that is true, but not talking about it. I've never seen him in Chinatown. But I imagine if you went to Chinatown, he wouldn't be good there.
Yeah, might trigger some PTSD, huh?
Yeah, you could say that for inherent racism.
So this guy was like, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. And then he would just like look down and be like, oh, that's an omelet. Never mind. So he never saw any battle at all.
Didn't see a single minute of combat. Spent all of his time on a base in Da Nang. Maybe he might have heard some gunfire, might have heard some bombs here and there, but he never once went out he was never in country.
He did love the whorehouses of Vietnam, and that's actually very true. He did, of course. That's what he did. That's, I mean, what you're gonna see again. He got training for it.
Yeah, he went into Da Nang, got some horrors, and came on back, worked on some radar. But really, the Marines, to their credit, this was the only time in Leonard Lake's life that anybody would see that maybe there's something a little fucked up about this guy.
And that's the Marines.
Right.
The Marines say to
in
a guy
1965.
literally, they were like, we can't put a gun in your hands. Meanwhile, they just faked a terrorist act to start a war in Vietnam.
I mean, Vietnam, they were like, you are far too sane for this gun. Go back, have a pint of whiskey, come back, we will arm you.
Yeah,
Vietnam was crazy.
Yeah, Vietnam was crazy, and Leonard Lake was too crazy for Vietnam.
Yeah, so they didn't give him any sort of, they let him go nowhere near the field. He didn't get a gun, and he was diagnosed as a schizophrenic, basically impending schizophrenia.
Yeah.
They were like, basically, he was like, well, it's like, he is one egg short of a dozen. He was like, that's like what his fucking terminology was, and they kicked him off the fucking Marines and gave him an honorable discharge.
And he was put in a hospital psych ward for a couple of months, and his first wife, Karen Lee Minersman, who he married between his first and second tours of duty, later told of a strange incident involving him soon after his diagnosis. One night, Lake broke into a storage facility to steal quote-unquote government equipment. Karen doesn't remember exactly what it was, but either way, he didn't find what he's looking for and blamed his failure on, quote, an attack of diarrhea.
Operation Brownie Pockets is in full effect. Retreat. Retreat.
I can't believe they've come back again.
His solution to this was to lay in bed for days at a time eating nothing but chocolate.
Ack, I know how that feels. You right, Kathy? Mondays.
His reasoning was that chocolate caused constipation, so as soon as he was suitably plugged up, he could resume his op and complete his mission. But as far as we know, he never did.
I would resume Operation Brownie Pockets, but I got to tell you what, I love shitting.
Yeah. Sounds like he likes chocolate more.
So no, Operation Fondue Tube is in full effect. Let's go.
Oh, my goodness.
But the rest of Karen's marriage to Leonard wouldn't be so whimsical.
That was the good part of it? That was the one 4 days in bed slamming chocolate so he would stop shitting himself?
So we could steal things from the government.
Oh, we had some good times, honey. But man, mostly it's been pretty rough.
Yeah.
So she described their first few months of marriage